Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Broida for Dewey Publications in Arlington, Virginia. I'd like to introduce you to our digital editions and their use by practitioners just like you and by me in their work involving the three principal agencies covered by the American Civil Service Law Series books. Principally, we're going to be talking about the Merit Systems Protection Board Guide, which I'll use as a demonstrator, but the techniques here are just as applicable to the EEO Guide, to the FLRA Guide. All these guides have been in development for more than 30 years, as well as the other digital editions of the books that we sell. On the screen is not me, that's Whitey the cat. I thought that would be a little less distracting than watching me trying to manipulate the computer. To begin with, we start with the MSPB guide itself. And this is what you would see. It's an Adobe PDF edition of the print guide. And it consists of the introductory materials, a preface, a glossary, and then we get to the table of contents. Now, the MSPB guide is 2 volumes in print, over 5,000 pages, and we're looking right now at the 2020 guide. The 2 volumes for the digital edition are combined. The FLRA guide, the EEO guide, each are 1 volume. We begin with a summary table of contents. The MSPB guide has 18 substantive chapters, a bibliography, a table of cases, and an index. After the summary table of contents, we have a detailed table of contents going through each of the chapters in considerable detail and ending up with that last chapter, the research and reference chapter, which is chapter 18. If you go back to the summary table of contents, you'll see the other 2 tables listed, the table of cases and the index. And if you want to fast forward to anything in the book, all you have to do is take your little cursor, put it under the page that you're interested in, and click on it. And that will take you to the page that you are looking for, and then you can begin reading through or paging through that particular section of interest. Now let's go back to that summary table of contents and take a look at a couple of the other features. First, we have an index. There's our index. And the index is, of course, basically an alphabetized table of contents, but not precisely so. Entries in the index may or may not correspond to the exact language of a topical heading on the page to which you are referred, but they will refer in any event to the general subject matter of the entry in the index that you're moving to. And again, as before, all you have to do is point to a page, click it, and then you'll move to that page from the index. Now, the table of cases, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of cases, starts at page 5075. So you move to that table, and there we are. And it starts at the A's and ends up at the Z's like any other case table. The distinction in the tables here is that we do not link the cases page by page to the book itself. If you want to find a particular case, you have to take a look at the page number for the particular case that you're interested in. And let's expand this slightly. Let's say it's the case there about in the middle of Abney versus Department of Army. That looks like a non-precedential decision from the board, the MSPB, from 2016. And it gives a page reference. So you go down here to your pagination within Adobe, type in your page number, and then here you are at the page. And where is Abney anyway? Well, there you would use your find function. That's Control F in Adobe and type in Abney. Try to do it right, unlike me. And there is Abney. And so you found your case. One other feature for those who are interested in background information is the bibliography. That's at page 5067. And there we have a bibliography. Some of the entries are to materials put together by Dewey Publications. So we're trying to sell you books, right? But others are to law review articles or materials from the General Accounting Office, the Office of Personnel Management, other materials that we think you will find of some interest. On the materials that are highlighted in blue, what that means is you can click on those materials and then, courtesy of the internet, you should be taken to the material that's referenced that's in the bibliography. So for example, let's take the entry here for a new civil service framework partnership for public service, a 2014 issuance, and see what we find. We're going to click on that. We're going to allow that to be found. And there you should be able to see on your screen now the material that was referenced. And in this case, the material requires a download, and you would be, I hope, able to download this. Many of the materials that we would reference would not require a download, they would just be displayed. But let's go back to the MSPB guide, and we're going to go to the top of the book, reduce it a little bit so we can use it more easily. And let's take a research problem. Let's take one that you might encounter in your practice. A case of a resignation of a federal employee who asserts before the MSPB that the resignation was coerced or that the employee entered into the resignation on the basis of misleading information. So how are we going to research this? A couple ways. If you're familiar with the law sufficiently so that you know that a claim of a forced resignation is effectively a constructive adverse action, what you could do would be to take a look at the structure of our chapters, and there you'll see one, Adverse Actions, at 1747. That's the page where it begins. So what you would want to do is go to the detailed table of contents starting at page 1747. Now, if you go down to the bottom of Adobe and type in 1747, that will take you to the beginning of the chapter, but it won't take you to the beginning of the detailed table of contents at page 1747. What you need to do is use your Control F function and find the next instance of page 1747. And there it is. It takes you to the section of the detailed table of contents involving adverse actions. So what you could do is either use a word search to find resignation or just scroll through this. Now it happens to be that right there toward the end of the page is constructive adverse action, right? So you know you're on your way. So what you're going to do is go down a page or two and voila, there is involuntary resignation. So there's your topic of interest, and here are all your little subheadings, and you can take a look at the subheading that's most of interest. But for our sake, my sake, let's just move to involuntary resignation by clicking on it, and there is your subheading expanded a little bit so you can actually read it and page through it and see what's of interest. As you page through it, you'll see other items that are highlighted in blue. What this means is that they are hyperlinked, so that if you click on them, you can move to that particular case. Now, for example, on the page that I'm looking at, you have the first case where there appears to be a blue hyperlink. That's a non-precedential decision of the Federal Circuit. And then a little bit further down is a decision hyperlinked in blue from the Merit Systems Protection Board 2005. So let's click on that. And now, with some luck, we are looking at the case of Bartels versus U.S. Postal Service. And you can move through that case. And now I want to illustrate another feature of how these books are structured. Perhaps you would like to cut and paste a section of that case for a memorandum of law that you're writing. And let's say it happens to be this paragraph 12 of the Bartels case. Now this is in Adobe, so what you can do is click, highlight, use Control-C to cut, and then we're going to go to our favored word processor. And here we are in our Microsoft Word document, And let's assume there's some pre-existing text and we want to quote the Bartels case. What we do is just use the paste facility to place the text that you've just cut from the case into your word processing document. Now you're going to have to do some formatting. Remember, you're moving from Adobe to, let us say, Microsoft Word. So it's going to lose the italics and other features. So you will have to use the features in your word processor to make this useful. Let's go back to the MSPB guide. And you'll see that we're back to where the Bartels case had been quoted, and we moved away from that in order to get to the case itself, clip out some material, put it into our document. Now within the MSPB guide, because this is Adobe, you can do exactly the same thing that we did with the Bartels case. You can click, outline what you want to cut it, go back to your word processing document, and then using the paste function, Control V, paste the material from the MSPB guide into your document. Again, you're going to have some formatting issues. You're moving from the PDF edition of the guide to Microsoft Word. And as you can see, the justification is going to require some work. And there are ways to do this, including using Notepad or just a certain amount of skill with your particular word processor to get the alignment proper and then to make sure all the typefaces are uniform, get the italics where the italics is supposed to be if it didn't transfer it when you're cutting and you're pasting. We return now to our friend, the MSPB guide, and we're back here again. What we've been looking at is a way to move to a discussion point that we're interested in relative to resignations using first the table of contents feature. Now let's say you wanted to do this using the index and you wanted to use the index to find information on resignations. So you go to, in our volume here, 5229 takes you to the index. And for a topic as significant as resignations, it does make sense to move down quickly in the index and see if you have a major index heading for resignation. Now, you could do this by a word search and you end up with resignation here and there, but not as a major topic. I can tell you from experience. So we're just going to move directly to or indirectly to resignations. Looks like we're closing in on it here. And there you can see resignation in the index with main points starting at pages 331 and 1810. Subsidiary points in the subheadings under the topic of resignation. If you were to move to 1810 using our point and search feature, you move right to involuntary resignation, which is part of Chapter 6 on adverse actions, which we had earlier been looking at when we're using the search method involving the table of contents. Let's say that there's a phrase that you're interested in or a case name, a particular case name that sticks in your mind. And in either event, you can find it in the book by using Control F on the PDF. And I'm going to take the situation in a constructive adverse action of a decision from the Federal Circuit years ago that said essentially that if an employee makes a decision with respect to something that could be an adverse action constructively, such as a resignation or retirement, without adequate information that the agency could have provided, implied we should have provided, that the decision becomes involuntary because the employee has made a decision with blinders on. Blinders on. So let's look for the word blinders. Let's say that's all you remember, blinders. And there we are. As we're moving through Chapter 6, there's the decision. It's a quotation from Porter versus Department of Defense, And you can see that there's a quotation there: a decision made with blinders on based on misinformation or a lack of information cannot be binding. And then the case is Covington versus Department of Health and Human Services. So you keep that in mind. What about this Covington decision? What you can do now is go to the table of cases, and you'll remember that starts at page 5075, and then use the find function to locate the Covington case. And away you go. There's Covington before the MSPB, a number of Covington cases. Covington in the Federal Circuit on 2 different occasions, and there are all the page numbers that you can check out for quotations directly from Covington or quotations about Covington that appear in other cases, either from the Federal Circuit or from the Merit Systems Protection Board. Another feature of the guide using the internal linking or hyperlinking is the ability to move from one section of the book to another, where you see a bracket with the words refer to or reference may be made to, and you see language suggesting a topical heading that's related to what you are researching. All you have to do is click on that, and then the book will take you right to that section. And let's use an example here, and I'll just go randomly here to page 1455 for no particular reason. There's our text. Let me expand this just a tad, and you'll see a couple sections there where the reader is invited to refer to chapter 5 or chapter 8. And the point here is you go to that blue section, the reference, click on it, and you're taken immediately to that section of the book where you can continue your research, find other cross-references, and move around in the book. This is in addition to being able to search on words, case names, and as we noted earlier, in addition to being able to find some cases, usually significant cases, that are hyperlinked to the internet. So we hope that with this short discussion, you have a better idea of how to navigate around in these fairly substantial guides on MSPB and EEO and the Federal Labor Relations Authority, as well as our other books. Once you get the hang of it with a little practice, you'll be moving around right quick, find materials quickly, be able to hyperlink within the books from one related section to another, and then hyperlink externally for important cases or regulations and sometimes statutes using the internet to the basic source so that you can cut and paste materials into your research memo or into your legal brief from the guides or from the original source materials. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions or concerns, send us an email, write us a letter, call us up, let us know. We're here to help you use these materials. We want your work with our books to be as successful as possible. This is Peter Broida for Dewey Publications. I thank you very much.